What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quartering. Obviously, we'll be on verdict watch most of today. Also, I will be live with Six Hexenhammer at 5:30 Eastern. Also, probably on verdict watch, and we'll be talking a lot about what transpired today in the Trump trial. I talked earlier today about a wild scene where the judge is essentially, at least as a layman, instructed that made a wild mistake that probably opens this trial up to an appeal almost immediately. We'll talk about that, as well as of just moments ago, Donald Trump was called back into court regarding several issues. The jury had several issues. As it stands right now, from what I understand, Trump basically has to stand there, mill around the building all day, and wait. It could be days, it could be weeks before we get any kind of verdict, but it could also be later today. I would suspect it'll be pretty quick, but as of right now, this is breaking. Jury sent a note to judge, which contains 4 requests. Jury in Trump trial has sent a note to the judge. DA Bragg's team has reconvened in the courtroom. Note subject unclear. And then we found out jury did send a note to Judge Merchan that contains 4 requests, 3 regarding David Pecker's testimony, and 1 regarding Michael Cohen's Trump Tower meeting testimony. It's a lot of people obviously think this means that they're leaning towards a guilty verdict. I think that a lot of people are obviously rightfully pessimistic on this whole case, mostly and also because the judge made a wild claim this morning that you see Kristi Noem tweeted, Judge Merchan's jury instructions are in direct violation of Richardson v. U.S., a decision that liberal Justice Breyer wrote and conservative justices like Scalia and Thomas agreed with. Totally rigged trial. The Supreme Court had decided the jury must be unanimous as to the series of underlying offenses in a CCE prosecution. That is, the jury must unanimously agree not only that the defendant committed some continuing series of violations, but also what specific violations make up the continuing series. Now, this is a federal court decision, so some people say, oh, it's different. It's going to be different in a state court decision. That's entirely possible. Essentially, what you have here, according to Fox News, the judge told jurors that they do not have to unanimously agree on what crime Trump is even guilty of. It could, in fact, be a 4-4-4 split. You could see a Libercat rating. This isn't even legal in Venezuela. How is this legal? Rest assured, this will be done for one reason and one reason only, the word guilty. They want the liberal media to parrot their narrative 24/7 up until the election. Appeal or not, change my mind. I've never heard of this. You see, Judge Merchan should never have presided over this case to begin with. His conflict by his daughter being paid by the Biden administration is ridiculous. Now Merchan is instructing jurors that they don't have to unanimously agree. Kangaroo court. Since when does a judge get to change the rules? It's almost like he's working for the prosecutor. I would argue that, asking for this additional information is probably not awesome. I think people are looking at this and not feeling great about the outcome of this, potentially being negative and a guilty verdict. But again, I will remind people and I'll remind my viewers that, a guilty verdict still doesn't necessarily mean much. He has whatever money he's going to need to fight whatever charges. He's unlikely to go to prison. Granted, some people say, well, hey, there's no end to the corruption that that this court could employ. And it's hard for me to argue with that, especially when it peels. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I suspect at this point, whatever he said must have been within the bounds of things that he could say. Otherwise, Trump's legal team would have been moving for an immediate type overrule. It's going to be interesting to see. You see the comments. Sounds like they're leaning towards conviction, guilty verdict incoming. The judge made it as easy as possible for them to get a conviction. Guilty verdict incoming. Should have come back. Not guilty already. What a disgrace. No crime. They're digging into the heart of the matter. I don't think you can read into this either way. As we thought, we're going to get an answer. I don't know. To me, I think it hasn't been that long. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse's jury didn't exactly come back right away and acquit him. I don't know that necessarily matters. You see, interesting information around the testimony around David Pecker. We also know the information around Cohen's testimony. It's going to be interesting. You see, prosecution defends credibility of Pecker's testimony, saying he had absolutely no reason to lie. Yeah, that's why Michael Cohen definitely had no reason to lie. It's difficult. It's unknown. You see, jury deliberations begin. The latest update we have, as of 17 minutes ago, essentially states that there's a palpable nervous energy throughout the courtroom as we await the jurors, prosecutors, and defense attorneys are paging through binders, seeming on a search for passages in particular question. As of 20 minutes ago, jurors made 4 requests in a note. The jury submitted on David Pecker's testimony regarding the phone conversation with Trump while Pecker was in the investor meeting, his testimony regarding the rights for Karen McDougal, and his testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting, as well as Michael Cohen's testimony regarding Trump Tower meeting. I don't know necessarily that this means anything one way or another. I think that, people who want justice, people who are fans of Trump, are so pessimistic with good reason, so in doubt that anything good could be coming out of this, that I totally understand where they're coming from. I mean, will we see? It's still early yet in New York. We might actually see a verdict today. So, I mean, it's a wild development. As of right now, there's not a ton. There's not a ton going on, not a ton in the mainstream media in terms of coverage. Obviously, we can't know what's going on in that room, but ultimately, the judge's decision to say, hey, here, just, however you can find him guilty, please find him guilty. You see this.
Well, let me ask you about the 3 choices. And one thing in particular that this judge said that these jurors could do. He just delivered what is being called really the pinnacle of all of this. He said that there is no need to agree on what has occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the 3 choices. Thus, this means that they could split 4-4-4, and the judge would still treat them unanimously. What does that mean?
That's so wild.
Well, it's really outrageous because in a normal criminal case, every statutory crime has what we call elements of the offense. Like in a bank robbery, unanimously that they were proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, what we're doing is taking the element that actually makes this a felony, because remember, falsification of records is normally a misdemeanor in New York. What makes it a felony is that you're concealing or committing another crime. And here the judge is telling them they don't have to agree about what the other crime is under circumstances where that not only is what makes this a felony, what makes it a 4-year potential prison penalty rather than a year or less.
Right.
But it's also what gets us into the courtroom, because if this had been a misdemeanor, the time to bring this case would have lapsed in 2019. So the only reason they're still able to bring this case is because it's a felony.
Essentially, the fact that it's a felony, is like, well, they got it into court, so none of that matters. They bent the rules to get it back into court. It's absolutely wild what they're willing to do to try and convict this guy. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like anybody who's, obviously on the defense, you see his flagrant disregard for the law is unbelievable. He will be overturned. It will be overturned on appeal. Almost certainly, this seems like it's setting itself up for a big headline about Trump found guilty, and then a subsequent headline that Trump will immediately appeal this. Because if he can't question the fact that it's a federal case, then, which would, by the way, make it kind of, it would defeat the whole purpose. Now it says breaking. Jury sends note requesting to hear David Pecker's testimony on phone conversation with Trump, McGoogle deal, which we just talked about. So that's basically all of the latest as of right now. I'll be live streaming at 5:30 Eastern tonight with Sticks, Hex, and Hammer. We'll be on Verdict Watch all night long. If you're enjoying the coverage, please do leave a like on this video. If you haven't yet, please do subscribe or follow down below, and we'll talk to you again real soon.